specifically for him. And I don't know what it was. I can remember I was like driving home, and I think I heard, I don't know, I heard like, I don't know if it was Ric Flair or something like that on the radio, but I was like, what about Rick Victor? And I was like, there's something about it. Just kind of sticks. Like it just stuck in my head right away. So I remember I texted Martlero and was like, what about Rick Victor? And even his response back was like, I hate it and like it at the same time because it's two first names. And I was like, right, like it's stupid, but it kind of works. And he was like, yeah. And he goes, eventually if like things go well, you're just going to drop one of them anyway. And it's probably going to be the Rick. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of my thought process about it. He's like, all right, we'll submit that one. And that's literally how it went until eventually at the Ascension one day, Bill walks up and says, you're no longer Rick Victor. I said, oh, who am I? You're Victor with a K. I went, all right, cool. He went, oh, and Connor, you're now just Connor with a K. And Connor was like, that's stupid. But I mean, yeah, that's how it goes.
The whole name thing and the process of how they flip people's names around, like for for example, Apollo Crews, they
Right.
changed him from like Apollo Crews, and then they just called him Apollo for a time, and same thing
Right.
with Austin Theory, calling him Theory, and then they gave him his first name back. That baffles my mind
Yeah.
sometimes.
I mean, I don't know if it has to do with certain copyright laws or whatever it is. I think they do. There's a lot that they have to go through with that kind of stuff.
Mm,
Um, but I don't know if that's what causes it or if it's just whoever's in control that week being like, I don't like the way this sounds. You
right,
know.
makes total sense.
Mhm.
How did you find out FCW would be rebranded to NXT?
I mean, they'd been talking about it for a while. Um, once Hunter got moved over into that position, um, I believe is kind of when we knew it was going to happen because when Hunter started coming down, all of a sudden it was like having actual eyes on what was going on in FCW because there'd been, I don't know, I think when I first got there, they had been trying to amp up for like one of the last seasons of NXT that never came to life or something like that. And so after that kind of like died and went away, they weren't really paying any attention at all to what was going on in FCW. And I can't really remember how long that went on for because we used to just do like showcases, like agents would come down for like a day and it always sucked. Like it was just everybody like it was just stressful for everybody.
Mm,
Um I mean, because like the agents like I don't know. I don't want it was like they just hated everybody in developmental. Like that was kind of how it felt. Like there was only a few people that they really gave a shit about.
right.
And I mean that's just kind of how it felt. I'm not saying that's actually how it was,
Yeah.
but like from my viewpoint looking at
Right.
it was like they just didn't care. And so they were trying to see if they had anybody within the system worth a shit that already looked like superstars to them. You know what I mean?
Mm,
And like Drew McIntyre was one of the last ones I can see kind of perform on one of those things and then being like, yep, okay, he's good. Let's bring him back up. And then, I think, and Jinder Mahal was one of the last ones too. And even when they pulled up Jinder, he was like, I'm not fucking ready for this. Like he had only been there 4 or 5 months or something like that. And, um, not within the system enough to learn kind of how it was and how he needed to be what he is today.
mm,
So, I mean, it was wacky. Like it was just a wacky kind of point in time. And so by the time like when we finally found out that Hunter then had been given complete control to kind of turn it into making it something else, that was when the NXT rebrand happened. And once he started with that at full sail, everything just started to kind of fall into place. Um, I mean, that was when like uh, like it just all kind of kept happening where he was going to take developmental and do what he did with it,
what it did.
make
Yeah.
it into something, you know what I mean? So it just kind of happened. Like I know I can remember the coaches kind of asking me and a couple of the other guys at one point, like, oh, what would you think if like we moved to Orlando, or like what if we started doing, you know, tours where we were touring outside of Florida, or then maybe outside of, the States. And we're like, well, that would sure be awesome. And I mean, none of that ever really happened until me and Connor got out of NXT. Then they started doing their Euro tours and all that sort of stuff, and it blew up. But I mean, being a part of that beginning was awesome, and watching it all happen, because it literally was going from being in that warehouse down here in Tampa, Florida, that's now a bounce house selling place or something like that next to the furniture store. And then we got moved into the performance center in Orlando, which they outgrew within a year, and they continue to outgrow it now, as far as I hear. And it's, like a whole other city within itself. So, I mean, it was awesome to see it all happen and be a part of it. It was very stressful. I want to say, as a talent, there was a lot of guys I know, um, that were, constantly threatened, like, just you ain't going to be here any longer if like this doesn't change or whatever else. And most of those people all made it and did really well. So it was, just one of those things where like the whole system, as you're being a part of it, watching it change, helping it grow, you're also under constant stress and pressure. And I mean, it's not a joke working there, that's for sure. At least it wasn't at that point in time.
Right, right. Like I can imagine the stress. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And just seeing the eyes on you and everything. That's got to be again stressful.
Yeah.
How did you find out you would be partnered with Connor to form the Ascension tag team? And what was it like to be one half of the NXT tag team champions?
Um, so it was pitched a whole bunch of times before, because Ascension went through like 4 different versions before I got in there. And Norman Smiley was always a huge supporter of me being a part of Ascension. Like there was one point in time Connor had actually broke his back. Um, and so Tom Latimer, and it was just Tom Latimer and Raquel at one point in time. And then Raquel was gone, and it was just Tom while Connor's back was broken. And so occasionally they would throw me in with him. So they'd be like, okay, you two guys team up. And we'd be like, are we Ascension today, or are we just wrestlers? And a couple of times they were like, you can go be Ascension. And we had some hilarious fucking matches that me and Tom remember quite well. But Dusty would never bite on it. Like whenever we do promos, Dusty would be like, nope, this ain't for you, baby. Go do something else. Good try. There was one day he made me do this sad promo. I can't remember exactly how it was. But it was me and Tom, and it was this really sad, like dark promo. And Dusty had me do it like 10 times. And by the end of it, I was like, never want to do this promo. No, I can't even remember what it was. I can just remember it was a sad promo. And then at the end, he was like, yeah, the thing for you, baby, do something else. And so it was like, Dusty just didn't want me to be an Ascension. And so then eventually, it happened where Tom was let go and Connor was doing it on his own. And I believe he'd started doing like live events, like he'd gone up and he was working with like Brodus and some other people. And I think Hunter, from my understanding, Hunter was like, this doesn't quite work as a singles gimmick. Like there needs to be like, it works so much better as a team. And so I guess the story that I always heard was that it was at NXT and Billy Kidman and Norman were like being timekeepers and agents or something like that. And I guess during my match, Norman had been saying to Billy, hey, I think Victor would be a really good fit with Connor to be an Ascension or whatever like that. And so supposedly Hunter walked up 10 minutes later during Connor's match and was like, man, we really need, this needs to be a team, like not a singles thing. And Kidman had looked at him and goes, literally, Norman just said 5 minutes ago that it should be with Victor. And apparently Hunter just went, I can see that. Let's give it a shot. And so it was like, as we were filming the first like cold open deal, like the first entrance for like NXT on the TV show, where I'd filmed some stuff just by myself or whatever. And Chris Chambers, a guy who'd been with the company forever, produced so much amazing stuff from WWE, worked with Vince and Dusty for years. Great guy. Loved working with Chris. I filmed my stuff and then he calls me over and he's like, "Hey, has anybody talked to you?" And I'm like, "You're talking to me." He goes, "No, has anybody talked to you about Ascension?" And I was like, nope, no, no. What do you mean?" And he goes, "Well, Connor just got here. He's in the back over there, but Hunter wants us to film some stuff just with you two." And I was like, "Well, I don't have like Ascension gear." He goes, "What you have will work. Just come out here. We're going to put you on a podium and fucking put a camera around you guys." Okay. And so literally, like, I knew Connor had just gotten back from working live events. He was not in a good mood that day. I think he'd also had it because like he'd been through so many incarnations of Ascension and they put so much work into everything that they did. I knew he was just burned out on it at that point in time. Like he was like, I can't deal with this shit anymore. He's like, "So let's just go do whatever they want and see what happens." And I mean, that was literally how it happened. I think I haven't looked it up for a long time, but there was like a GIF, and it's just the camera spinning around like me and Connor, and we're just standing there with we're back to back with our arms raised or something. That was the very first thing we ever filmed together, and
Oh.
that was literally where it went. Like after they just saw that, they were like, "Yep, do it." And so Bill and Dusty and Byron Saxton put nonstop work into making us Ascension and eventually what we would become within NXT. And then, I mean, when we won the tag titles, was a real messed up day. I'll put it that way. It was not a good day. Because they'd been kind of teasing us, I think, for about a month or two about talking about having us be the tag team champions. And I wouldn't really here for it. I never believed anything that they would say, especially in those regards. And I'm the firm believer in wrestling. Like it ain't happening until it's happening. Like I gotta be there doing it for it to actually be happening. Otherwise, I don't believe it's gonna happen. And even that day was terrible. I remember we got to the show and we saw the run sheet, and it had somebody else completely being annexed. I think it was actually supposed to be what's his name now? Dash Harwood from FTR and Miro were supposed to, as what it said, we're going to be the tag team champions. And I was like, yeah, I fucking knew it. Yes. And so we just went on our way for whatever, waiting around to see whatever was going to happen for that day. And then eventually we got kind of told that nobody believed in us, except for Hunter and Bill. And they're like, "So we are going to have you guys win the titles tonight, but you basically have a month to change everyone's opinion about you guys, or else you're fired." And we're like, "Huh? Is this a fucking pep talk before we win the titles?" Not a very good pep talk. And I mean, it was just one of those things where, I don't know, a month later, all of a sudden, "Hey, you guys are good." We're like, "What?" But I mean, it was a really shitty month. Winning the titles that night, didn't mean shit. It just, even with everyone was I remember the match was pretty good. I don't think that was the one. Can't remember if there was something got messed up in one of our last one or two matches with Graves and Neville. And it was to the point where whatever finish we had was not what was supposed to happen. And so it kind of had to get changed on the fly. We had to adjust in the ring live on television or however we were doing it. And so everything was always kind of catastrophic and fucked up for a while, especially at that point in time where nothing was as fun or enjoyable as it should have been until you'd maybe watch. I always remember there was in one of those last two matches, I was staring, whatever had happened, I was staring at Graves on the outside, when the pin was supposed to be happening or something. And we were kind of face to face almost. And I was like, "Oh shit, am I not supposed to be over here?" And out of nowhere, Connor with a baseball slide, Like I'd never seen him do it again. Like just comes and annihilates Graves in front of me, and I'm like, oh well, that solves that problem. And so like it was one of those things like we could laugh about afterwards, because like when we saw the match back, we're like, there's that moment where both of us are thinking, oh shit, what do we do now? Are we fighting? Like what's happening? And then Connor just annihilates him. And it was just like, oh well, guess we figured that one out. But I mean, there was always just something messed up. Like there was it was a very stressful time. I mean, it wasn't fun for quite a while leading up to that point and even afterwards. And I mean, it took a while until they kind of eased off of us, even on live events and stuff like that, until they were like, no, you guys got your rhythm down and you're doing good. And you know, everything was kind of working. And then it just became a waiting game. So that was all. Like the year, you know, that we were tag team champions, it never really felt like we were champions, in all honesty. Like me and Connor never really felt like what we were doing was working because of the way we were kind of treated and stuff. And a lot of that was behind closed doors. Like it wasn't made in front of people and stuff. Like there was one point we were getting like our evaluations, and this is when we had already been champs for a while. And basically we were told that if like Vince didn't get it, like within the next like 3 months or something like that, they were going to fire us. And I just remember looking at the talent relations person, and I just called bullshit on him. And he's like, what? And I go, so like, we're the leaders here. We're the guys that you tell everybody in the performance center that they need to look up to, that they need to be like. And you've never brought us up for a live event. You've never done anything else with us other than this. And so now you're going to tell me that if Vince doesn't get Ascension in the next 3 months, that you're going to fire us? He's like, yeah. I go, that's fucking bad business. I go, because everybody in this place is going to immediately know that you guys are all full of shit, and they ain't going to give a fuck about anything you say again afterwards. I said, so if you want to do that, have fun. And I remember I looked at DeMott, who was sitting there, and he was laughing. And like he was like trying to hold it in. And I looked at Bill and I go, what do you think? He goes, you ain't wrong. And that was all he said. And I mean, it turned out okay after that. Well, so to speak.
Right.
But I mean,
what was it like working with Too Cool, Grandmaster Sexy, and Scotty 2 Hotty?
So that was another one of those things where, so Scotty had come in a few times, and so we'd kind of gotten to know him a little bit, because I think that was when they were trying to get him to come on as a coach. And so getting to meet him and like getting to know him a little bit was really cool. The problem was there was a lot of rules when you were working Ascension, and especially working within WWE. And so Scotty had said to us before, he goes, this is going to be a pain in the ass, and it's because of all the rules, more or less. You know what I mean? So like we actually had, Brian got there for it. We actually had Bloom, DeMott, Scotty, and us all sitting there to discuss everything. And it was mostly so because like Scotty would say, like, this is all the stuff that like me and Brian do on the indies when we work and whatever, and this is going to be what he wants to do, and I know that we're not allowed to do any of this stuff basically within WWE or with you guys especially. So it all like kind of had to be like handled a lot. Like everything got very micromanaged, but we managed to have a lot of fun working with them. And I mean, there was even one point where I may or may not have been getting told to do something while I was in the ring with Brian. And, he kind of just goes, what? And I go, don't fucking worry about it. We ain't doing that shit. And so like I really liked working with them, and every time I used to see Brian afterwards, we'd always say hey and like catch up and stuff like that and talk for a while. And also knowing I was the only person to ever stop the worm until somebody did within the last year or two on Scotty's travels. Because when I saw him posted, I was like, fuck, that ain't me anymore. Because I had that, and I at one point in time was the last guy to take a diamond cutter because they got eliminated by DDP in
Right.
one of the Andre the Giant battle royals, and then within the last couple of years, he hit somebody else with it. I was like, "Fuck, that's gone too." No,
Man.
but I mean, yeah, working with them, it was super cool. Like because we wanted somebody good to work with. I mean, because they had only been, I don't even think at that time they hadn't built up Callisto or anybody else to work against us. I think any other teams they'd been using. I mean, Colin Cassidy, like Bill Cassidy and Angelo Dawkins had worked with a million different partners against us. They had been partners against us. They actually beat us at the very last FCW show. And then they still didn't get paired together, by the time NXT came about. Like it was, as the whole movement was going on, there was no teams built to even contend with us. So, I mean, by the time we had been begging, for somebody to work with, and so getting to work with them was such a huge deal to us, especially that was on, I don't know what, the first or second NXT pay per view or whatever it was.
Right.
So, yeah, it was super cool. Super cool to work. Too cool.
Definitely, definitely. I like how you said that. How did you find out Connor and you and Connor were being called up to the main roster?
Um, Such a weird day. I think it was after we'd lost. Well, it was after we'd lost the titles to Callisto and Sin Cara. I can't remember if it was before we'd worked with Ben and Kenta. I can never remember what they called Kenta in WWE. Deo Tommy, right. So they had just brought them in. And I can't remember if we had kind of done our whole deal with them yet or not. Sometime it was sometime around there. But I just knew there was one day I think we got told like, hey, we're gonna have a meeting with the office tomorrow. So like be in the performance center at like this time and we're gonna be in the big meeting room. And I was like, cool, we're gonna get fired like this personally like this? Like that's nice of them to do after this long. That was kind of what I was thinking. But so then as we were sitting there in the big boardroom with Bill, then like Dream came in and sat down, and then like Sarah came in and sat down. And so like and then I think like David Bailey came in and sat down, and like all of a sudden there was all the like, head coaches and whatnot there. And then we get Hunter on the screen, or actually it might have been Jane first, I think was there. I can't remember Jane's last name when she was running all that stuff. But so it was like, yeah, her and Hunter and Canyon eventually, and like they kind of start talking, and all I could think of was like, this is a really elaborate way to fire us. Uh, was kind of where my head was at. And then all of a sudden, Hunter kind of goes, so yeah, Vince finally gets it. You guys are going to be brought up. And like everybody cheered. And like for me, I was sitting there and like, I think at that point in time, I've been wrestling for about 15 years. And it was like, it was like when you die, the stories of when you die and you see your life flash before your eyes. And I was just kind of like seeing everything flash right before my eyes of like the whole journey there. Because I remember what kind of snapped me out of it was like, Hunter goes, everybody looks really happy except for Victor. And I was like, huh? No, I'm like, awesome. Yay. And he goes, cool. And he goes, Bill, did you show him the picture yet? And Bill's like, no.
Uh-oh.
And he's like, Bill, show him the picture. And so then we got the picture of what creative had come up with for us. And I immediately went back to hating my life. So that was kind of that. I mean,
Wow.
I took a look at that the picture of us with the stupid eye shit and the gear and whatnot, and it was just like, what the fuck is this? Like, if he gets it, why are we getting changed? And I know, like, I lived with Tyler Breeze at the time, and we always like whatever we thought was cool, the other one did not think was cool. That was just the way we were, which was fine. So I was like, I'm gonna go show this picture to Breeze, see what he says. And I showed the picture to him. He's like, man, that is so cool. And I was like, yeah, I'm fucked. Like, that was just it. So, I mean, that was how that happened. And I mean, then even when they went to bring us up, like, usual fashion, nothing happened the way it was supposed to. We went up to film some stuff. Hunter hated it, had it changed. We had to rewrite it. Then we had like filmed promos to, last for like a month or something like that. and it was right around Christmas time. And so like they had brought us, we had kind of been doing live events and stuff. And they'd kind of been doing some other stuff with us because I remember I'd been talking with the travel girl about some stuff. And then I think we had just figured out like, okay, because I was going to go back to Canada for a few days for Christmas or whatever during the NXT Christmas break.
Mm.
And I'd just finished talking to her and being like, okay, well, this is where I'll be. But I don't, it doesn't seem like they're going to bring us back right at this time or whatever. And then I looked at Twitter, I think right afterwards, and our promo of like incoming next week is the Ascension. And I was like, what the fuck? They played two of them. They like jump started and they played two of them on Raw. Immediately I had to talk to the travel lady and I said, I think you're going to get notification that we need travel. And she was like, okay. And so that was what had happened and when we debuted.
Wow. So those quick
Yeah.
happened fairly quick.
Yeah. It happens overnight after, a decade of doing whatever,
Right.
as they say.
Can you talk about the Ascension vignettes that you kind of just referred to, basically?
Oh, yeah. They were terrible. I mean, I've always been pretty nice when I talk about them, but honestly, like what I remember is sitting there with Road Dogg. I've never actually said Road Dogg is the one that was helping us write these because it was fucking stupid. Like that's all I can say. The original ones that we did were so stupid that Hunter literally went and stopped them and he was like, no, this is not what we want. I'm not letting them do this to you guys. And so we had to redo them for what they were. And I mean, they just were what they were. I mean, the fans were pissed because they were already used to what we were in NXT and we were getting an unnecessary gimmick change to something that looked fucking stupid. And, it was one of those things where like there was nothing, it really seemed like there was nothing we could do about it. If anything, we looked at it as like, well, if they put this ridiculous shit on us, maybe that means like we can build on it as we go. And so even now, like as I think about it, like when I've seen La Rebellion on NWA, La Rebellion is exactly what Ascension wanted to be. Like they've got all the gear and the gimmicks and the paint and the mask, and we are like, if that was how we should have been. It should have been a full blown like Metal Master deal. You know what I mean? Like it needed to be way more than what it was.
Right. Right.
And so it just never worked. And I mean, that's just kind of how it came to be, I guess. I mean, that would like we always looked at it as like, well, we could always build on this because like we would always find ways to try to find people to make us stuff. Because we had a lot of cool ideas. We had even asked about like different face paints and whatnot like that. And we were not allowed to change a damn thing for like 2 years. Like it took forever until finally like we weren't wearing the shoulder pads anymore until I finally got to change the paint up a little bit. Yeah, it was just a pain in the ass. So,
Yeah, I remember those shoulder pads, and then I remember at one point seeing y'all without them, and it's like, what happened? What happened with the shoulder pads? And
yeah, because finally we were allowed to wear shirts that they weren't making anymore because
right.
they'd run us so far into the ground.
Wow.
So that was just how it went. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
You got to work with the New Age Outlaws at the Royal Rumble. What was that like working with them?
I mean, that was awesome because we really wanted to work with them. Me and Billy used to have a really funny relationship where, unless I really said, "Hey, Billy, let's cut the shit. I need your advice," type of thing, we would always fuck with each other. We were just two very different personalities, and so like I wasn't one of his favorites, but like when we'd work together, it was awesome because Billy's legit one of the best. He's one of the guys I use to describe to my students all the time because he's one of those guys that turns it on like nobody else. And I mean, Road Dogg's the same way. Like if you talk to Road Dogg like one-on-one, still a good, he's cool to talk to. He's fun to talk to and stuff. But like they both of those guys are such characters in the ring that they don't have to be in the ring to turn their characters on. Like I kind of do for the most part, but they just turn on like that. And it's such a night and day difference where like you're just like, holy shit. Like Hacksaw Jim Duggan was one of those guys. When I first met him, I didn't recognize him at the first time I passed him. And then when I got to know him and like talk to him, I was like, whoa, this is crazy. And like I did a tour with him like probably 20 years ago now, way up in Nuvik, the Northwest Territories. And then when he would get into like ring mode, it was like, holy shit. Like he'd make us feel like we were 6 years old because it was like, wow, this is like watching on TV again. And he'd just be doing, oh, in the locker room and stuff like that. So it was awesome. Those guys, they all had that about them. They just had that energy that like you can't teach it. You either got it or you don't. And I
Right.
mean, and there's a lot of people where you don't know you have it until you kind of find it out there. And I mean, I know a lot of guys who are kind of like that, where backstage they might be quiet or mild mannered or whichever, and then the minute they go through that curtain, it's like boom, just a million time bigger personality that shows out. So, and I mean, working with those guys, it was like getting to finally, you know, work with somebody like that. It was really cool.
Definitely, definitely. And then another moment that you got to have with the New Age Outlaws included was the moment with the New Age Outlaws, the APA on Raw. They saw on Raw on the Raw reunion, and with the NWO. Talk about that.
I mean, the writers were real happy. Everybody else was real happy. It was just a weird day. I mean, like I like a lot of those guys. A lot of them are real cool to us, um, despite what people might think. JBL was always really cool with us. Um, I mean, it's one of those things that like it seemed cool as we were kind of setting it up, and afterwards we were like, well, everybody seems like so happy that I mean, does it matter? Like, business got paid off, whatever else. Okay, cool. Um, but I mean, nothing good came of it for us. You know what
Right.
I mean? Like it was very much one of those things where, I mean, you get shot out of a cannon to, you know, the craft, more or less.
Yeah.
Um, so, it just was what it was. It was a cool moment, I guess, but it's not one of those things I ever look up on YouTube if I'm searching for myself for whatever reason, which doesn't happen very often. But I mean, yeah, it's not one of those things I replay like, oh, that was so cool.
Mm.
Like, it was cool to do something with those guys,
Right.
but what came of it wasn't, particularly cool or rewarding in the long run.
No, I can get that. From the outside looking in, and just hearing you say it in that sense, I can understand that. Because like, yeah, it might have been cool, to, like you said, be in the ring with them or something,
Mm,
but it didn't do anything for y'all as a tag team. It didn't
no.
further anything. So yeah, I can understand that.
Mm.
What was it like to be a part of? You were a part of many of the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royals at WrestleMania.
Was it everyone?
What were those like?
Chaos. Always chaos. Complete fucking chaos. I mean, um, they're always fun. I mean, like, at least, how do I put it? You're always going out in front of a WrestleMania crowd. So it's awesome. There's a lot of people in there, and not everybody's always on the same page. So that's what I mean by chaos. Um, you know, um, it was just always like an awesome experience. Like I'll never forget our first year. We were heading down the ramp, at where was it? The 49ers brand new Levi's Stadium there in San Jose or San Francisco, wherever it was. And I'm just looking around like, holy shit, look at all these people. That is awesome. and I hear somebody behind me grumbling, going, "Can't even come out to my own entrance music. I gotta come out to this shit." I
Lord.
won't say who it was,
Yeah.
but it completely ruined the moment.
Wow.
There was always something like that, right? Like people were always pissed about being in it because they're like, "Well, we work all year to get here." You know what I mean? And this is all we get. And I mean, that was all we got every year at WrestleMania. Um,
Mhm.
Even that year, like I remember somebody coming up to us and being like, "Hey, we wanted to put you guys in this the it was like a big like four-way tag or something like that, but there was we legitimately got a reverse racism reason for why we couldn't be in the match." And they were like, "But don't worry, you guys will have something next year." And I was like, "Fuck, we will." I was like, "If that's what you're telling us this year, next year ain't gonna get any better." And I wasn't wrong. 'Cause we just had the same thing like every year. And I mean, it was always fun to get to do. Like, I mean, we got to throw out Shaq one year. I got to take the diamond cutter from DDP one year. My last year, I took the worm from Otis and his deal before getting thrown out. You know, there's always something fun. Like, there were always cool. There's cool moments. Like, in the first year, we eliminated Mark Henry too. Like, that was
Mhm.
pretty awesome. I remember that. He gave us we did the headbangers smash thing to him and then got rid of him. So, I mean, there was always something cool. Like, it's always awesome to be out there in front of that WrestleMania crowd. I mean, it's hard. It's hard when you're in there with a lot of guys who are not happy about what they're doing, because
Mhm.
everybody there, you work so fucking hard all year. And, sometimes when that's all you get year after year, it's hard. Performers want to perform, and it's really hard to perform when you got 30 other people doing their shit around you. So,
Right. And
how it is.
like I definitely like I get that too. Like because like I said, they wanted you be working all that time throughout the year to get on
Yeah.
WrestleMania, the biggest show there is.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you know, I can get that. That's why I like to see that WWE's kind of taken back and pulled back away from that. Let's get everybody on WrestleMania. Let's just
Right.
have all these matches. One, it takes too long for
Yeah.
14 plus matches on this
Right.
one show. And so I
Yeah.
like that they've also split them up too. But trying to get
Yeah.
everyone on the show is it's too much sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, it makes much more sense to me now how they do
Yeah,
things with like doing it over, 2 days or whatever it is. I mean, I haven't
for
watched a
sure.
WrestleMania since I've got let go, but
I get it. I get it. Um, who were some of your favorite people to work with in WWE?
I mean, Heath and Rhino. We worked pretty much well everywhere around the world that we worked. Same with Sin Cara and Kalisto. Um, I mean, working with um, Joe Hennig and Bo Rotundo was always fun. Working with the Usos, which we didn't get to do enough of, but every time we did, it was always awesome. I loved working with them. Uh, Doing the Breezango stuff, doing the Fashion Files stuff, like that was honestly such a breath of fresh air for us at the time because we were not happy. There was not many of us that were happy at that point in time, and that kind of breathed new life into us. And it was one of those things where like, oh fuck, we're finally having fun at work again, and it was going well. Like that was. I mean, we used to always enjoy. We get stuck in those like holiday backstage cluster deals or whatever, where it was whatever. And those were always actually a lot of fun for us whenever we'd do them. And so then by the time Fashion Files hit, when we first got asked to do it, we were just in a closet in a hallway in London, screaming, making noise, banging on walls. And we were in there like all afternoon filming this. And so we are like, I don't even know what the fuck's going on. And then we did the Twin Peaks one. And I remember Connor being like, well, sorry, boys, we probably sunk this ship. Cause like none of us, only that whole thing was due to the writers. The writers
Mhm.
loved Twin Peaks. They knew the comeback was coming, all that kind of stuff. And so the way they had us do it was perfect because then I became a huge Twin Peaks fan afterwards. Because I'll never forget, we thought, this will be the end of the Fashion Files right here. Nobody's going to get this. It's going to bomb. And when I landed off my plane the next morning, because we were always flying home super early, my Twitter was blowing up because of that stuff. And, the Twin Peaks people had seen it and tweeted about it and all this sort of stuff. And all of a sudden that was when it took off. And so that was the point, like a new refresh point for us where everything became so much fun. The writers were super into everything we were doing on there. Everybody kind of got it except for one person, the person that counts. And so that's kind of what happened and why it faded away because Vince got pissed off that he was the only one that didn't get it. And he didn't like when everybody was laughing and gorilla around him. And he's like, I don't get it. I watch this shit. I don't know what it is. It's literally how he felt, I guess. That was kind of what we got told. I mean, there was one day I remember sitting there and we were filming the Stranger Things one and they had me dressed up like Barb. And so I had this stupid shirt on and my face paint and everything. And I'm asking one of the guys who's like, does the filming and stuff for it. And I'm like, hey, dude, do you have a wig for me? And right then, Vince is walking by and he goes, yeah, we got a wig for you because you got to wear a wig. Ah. And then he just walked away. And I was like, does that mean he doesn't hate the Fashion Files? Like, I don't know what's going on. Like, it's just silliness. I mean, but it was a lot of fun. And I mean, I always loved working the Bludgeon Brothers too. That was one of those things where it was actually supposed to be the Bludgeon Brothers in the Fashion Files who kept messing them up. But then there was always something that happened. Like one of them was hurt for a while. And then there was always something where neither of them, like either one of them wasn't there or both of them weren't there. There's always something going on. So then it was like, well, but we'll write another one with Ascension in there. And it just kept being us. So, and it was, I loved that because even then we got turned babyface for a very short period of time against the company's wishes. So,
right. So it worked out right there.
no, I mean, for a little while.
Those were really good too. Those Fashion Files were really good too. I enjoyed those.
Yeah, they were a lot of fun, man. Like I said, it's rare when like talent and writers all can agree on something like so fun and creative, and you can like actually go in looking forward to what you're going to do every week instead of worried about how it's going to get torn apart type of thing. Because that was one of those things that like Vince really didn't touch too much. There was only like one time where there was like a fart joke in something. Because like whenever you get a script, if something was highlighted, that means that was directly from Vince.
Oh, wow.
Well, our scripts were never highlighted except one day there was one that had a fart joke highlighted. And we're like, why is this highlighted? We're like, because that's from Vince. We're like, all right, cool. That was it. That was the only one.
Go figure.
Oh.
I do reminisce, if that's the word, to ask you, do you have maybe a quick story about Bray Wyatt?
And like it's wacky to me when I first got signed and walked into FCW. I think even when I went in for my tryout the first time, two of the people I sat down with first off were Wyndham and Bo. And they were just the nicest two fucking guys like you could ever hope to hang out and work with, do anything with. He actually pitched for me to be in the Wyatt family when they were starting. I was going to be the bump guy. And so in the original Titantron video, I'm actually in it. There's like me and there's a guy named Bronson that was in FCW. I can't remember if Silent Rage was in that video too, because there was a few of us in the forest with Wyndham and Harper. And then there was Audrey Marie was like the sister Abigail off and like hanging in the tree and stuff like that. And so we had actually all gone out and filmed that here in Florida together. And so I used to, when they started kind of like bringing him up as that was happening, I would always be back in FCW and we'd be filming like our promo days and stuff like that every week. And I would always be doing stuff with Harper and Rowan. And so it wasn't until kind of like they finally made the decision of like those two were getting called up and I wasn't. But like Wyndham was such a character. I mean, he'd walk in the locker room and you knew immediately when he was there. I had so many good times with him. I just, I mean, I always remember laughing. Like anytime you're around him, he's always laughing, telling funny, messed up stories. I mean, there's just, I have a memory that sticks out in my head. And this was, I don't know, it was probably my last year on the road. And there was one day just sitting there in the locker room. And when there's certain days where everybody just starts having a little more fun, because like nobody's kind of doing anything or something. And it was like, I wanted to say it was like watching daycare, but like with a bunch of grown men, like just messing around in a locker room. And it was always like Wyndham and Taylor that kind of inspired it all. They were both wild men, just telling their stories from growing up in Brooksville, Florida. And always fun. I mean, one of the last times I can remember really talking with Wyndham, we had a pretty serious like life talk. We were both going through some similar things. And I mean, it just kind of blew my mind um, when all of a sudden he passed away. Because I mean, like I hadn't talked to him in a long time, but it was just one of those things where it's like, holy shit, like how did that happen? He's one of those. I mean, sometimes when you're younger, we all do a lot of dumb stuff, and I mean, there was points where, yeah, we were all doing stuff that probably, I don't know. And I mean, it wasn't anything. I'm not talking about like drugs or booze or something like that, but people were just
Right.
doing silly stuff that's probably a little bit over the limit, like taking way too much pre-workout and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, always making a thing or a joke out of it. And, Taylor and Wyndham were guys like that. I don't know if Taylor still is like that. I'd imagine I haven't seen him for a little while now, but he seemed a lot calmer the last time I saw him a few years ago. But, because since I had COVID, I didn't make it out to the funeral for everything. I didn't think that was a very nice idea to do. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't have any specific stories that I can specifically tell because I mean, we just always had so much fun together. I didn't get to work with him very much. Like I was thinking about it, and I was like, well, I think we only had the one match with him and Matt on Raw.
Yeah.
I think that was the only time I can ever remember actually getting into the ring with Bray Wyatt.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
I like you said, the shock when I first heard about his passing. I'm still not over it. Like it was, I kept texting people, and like this is Eddie Guerrero esque type of shocking passing because that's
Yeah,
how it was. It was like a Eddie Guerrero, like losing Eddie Guerrero when we lost Eddie. It was such a shock. Same with Bray, and
yeah.
so yeah, definitely. Thanks for sharing that story right there. Um, how did you find out you would be released from WWE?
Well, kind of saw it coming. We'd been sitting at home for about 8 months, I think. I mean, the last WrestleMania we did in Brooklyn, we did that. We did I don't know, like main event taping or whatever it was the day after. We went home the next week. There was like the draft in Montreal. And so we had been told that we were going to stay on Raw, I think, like that. And it was weird because, like, they did their like TV draft or whatever, but like obviously we weren't going to be in the TV drafts. And so it was actually the travel lady that came up to us and was like, no, you guys are going to stay on the red side. And we were like, okay. And so I think that weekend was the only time in my almost 10 years there that I ever asked for time off. Or at least like we'd been on the road for 5 years, and that was the only time I'd ever said, "Hey, can I have this one Monday off? I've got some personal stuff going on. Can I miss a Raw, please?" And I'd actually checked this out months in advance. Got it approved. Um, so I'd gone home thinking like, "Cool, I've got a weekend off. I don't have to fly out anywhere." And on the Friday, Tyler Breeze hit me up. He says, "Hey, what does your schedule look like right now?" Because we had an app WWE had an app to tell us all what our schedules were that they could just update and whatever. Pretty handy. He goes, mine just got cleared. Do you have anything in yours? And I'm like, well, I only had TVs for the month or whatever, like leading up because I'm away this weekend. He goes, check in your app, see if you still have TVs. All right. So I check. Nope, all gone.
Oh, wow.
And so I was like, yeah, I guess they're all gone. I was like, I don't know, maybe I'm fired. He goes, no, I guess there was another list, is what he said. There was another list that was a yellow list. And none of us got told that we were on the yellow list. I'm like, what's the yellow list? Oh, it's the NXT list. A bunch of us are going to get sent back. I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. And Breeze just kind of goes, well, I'm calling Hunter. I'm going to figure this out. I said, all right, you call Hunter, figure it out. I was like, I'm going to go enjoy my weekend off. And then I enjoyed every other weekend off after that. Forever. More or less. Because, like, I mean, they didn't say shit to us. Like, you know, I told Connor, and I think he started, you know, making calls and digging around. I think we got pulled off like the Euro tour that was, you know, right after that. And they just give us like bullshit answers. Like they're just like, I don't know. Like Carano wouldn't answer our calls and stuff like that. And so I think for about 2 months of not getting any answers from anybody.
Wow.
One day we get a text message and it was from Mark Carano. And it basically stated that they just had a super awesome meeting in the office. Like there's so much good stuff. Like it's basically what the text message said. Like there's so much good stuff going on right now within this company. And there's nothing for you guys. Was how the text ended.
Wow.
And like I kind of had to reread it a few times to be like, is this really like am I really reading like this much of an asshole text to us right now after like not responding for a couple months after they like hadn't said anything to us?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Connor texted me and he was like, did you get this? And I was like, yeah, I got it. He goes, what do you think? I go, I don't think I'm going to say anything. And he was like, yeah, that seems like a good idea. And I was like, yep. Because they weren't like at that time, people had been asking for releases. They weren't giving anybody the release. They had been promising a bunch of people big contracts and shit like that at that time so that they wouldn't go to AEW. I was like, I don't think they're worried about us. But I didn't think that they were going to release us either. So, well, I mean, they just weren't going to release us right then. We were like, well, if they just want to sit here and let us sit at home and pay us, I was like, I'll take the paychecks. I really don't care. After like this long, I know we were both super burnt out. We were both super fed up. And so like after that text, we actually ignored a monthly text from Mark Carano for the next 4 or 5 months. And I think it wasn't until maybe the month before we got released where Carano would send us the text of like, hey, checking in, seeing how you guys are doing. And finally we both responded with like a thumbs up. Like, and that was it. So, I mean, the writing was on the wall. Like we knew it was coming up sooner than later. I mean, we just felt so completely disrespected after everything. Like they could have been honest with us. You know what I mean? It wasn't like we weren't grown men that couldn't see what was going on. Like luckily we were both smart enough to like set ourselves up with the way we were getting paid at the time, so that we wouldn't, you know, miss out on money from being left at home, that type of shit. So I mean, it was what it was. I mean, by the time I had the bullshit conversation with Carano at the end, I was like, you know, get on with it. What do you need from me right now? Like, you need my address? You want to know where I am so that you can send me my final paperwork? He was like, yeah. It's like, okay, here it is. Bye. So,
Yeah.
I mean, end of a shitty era.
Yeah, like that's definitely disrespectful the way they did that, and
Yeah, I mean, so Brody too was somebody like on that who was released that same day.
Mm.
And so this was the funniest thing. We all got text messages that day. Hey, you guys free to talk? And I actually texted somebody else and I was like, hey, are they like firing people through text message now? Is that how it's going on? And so Brody specifically goes, no way. He goes, I just got a text message from Chrono too, and I was in contract negotiations with him a week ago. And I was like, well, that might be for you. Um, but I'm doubting that they're texting us about contract negotiations. And his exact reply was, I'm not I'm not texting him back. I'm not gonna ruin a good day I'm having with my son. All right. 20 minutes later, he texted me. He goes, I just got fired. So I
Wow.
was like, oh, guess I know what's happening next. So, because it was us and him and Sin Cara. And Sin Cara had been asking for his release, I think, for about a year, and they wouldn't give it to him until then. So,
Wow.
yeah.
I think I remember that day and seeing that. I was
Hmm.
all y'all, and I hate to see anyone be released, um, especially when they're not asking for it.
Hmm.
I imagine the sitting at home, like you said, sitting at home getting a paycheck. Yeah, hey, if you want to pay me while I sit at home, go for it.
Yeah.
But then
I mean,
in the
I didn't mind
same,
the vacation after all that time. That's for sure,
yeah,
especially a paid one.
yeah, and but then in the same, it's disrespectful because like you could have took your talents elsewhere
Yeah,
before then. You know,
probably. I mean, the way I look at it is something about me and Connor was we were eternally cursed, no matter what. And I mean, and I don't know if it's just me because like I've told him shit's always happened like this to me, and he said it didn't always happen to him. But I was like, well, it's happened since we've been together too. So it was just kind of how it went. But even then, once we got released, we started doing stuff. We were actually booked all the way up to WrestleMania for stuff like every weekend. We had multiple things going on during WrestleMania weekend in Tampa or whatever it was. I think, yeah. We get out for 2 weeks, 2 weekends. After that second weekend, COVID hits, shuts everything down. All of our bookings gone. Everything consistently that we would work on having happen, something something would happen that was outside of our control even that would stop every opportunity that we had. And to the point where it's just fucking ridiculous. Where you're like, is this the world just saying like stop? Like don't just quit trying, more or less, because it's not going to work. Like which is it seems crazy to me because like we used to think like there's so much money on the table with us. It's just getting thrown away no matter what. But it seemed like nobody else nobody else with any power to pick up that money from the table ever thought the same way. So I
right.
mean, by the end of it all, like I mean, when we did our last two matches together, just over a year ago now, we worked Rock and Roll Express for Outlaw Wrestling, and then we worked the Hardys, and even there's some issues with leading up to like working the Hardys, not between me and Connor, but there was something like the shows. God, I don't know. There was some sort of fuck up, and I was like, man, I'm so sick of this shit. Like, and I'd said to Connor, like, I don't, I don't think I want to do this anymore. I'm tired of beating this dead horse. Because then by the time that the match with the Hardys came back, he was like, hey man, I don't know if you want to do this. And I was like, oh, well, I think it had to do with the promoter. I was like, well, if they got their shit together and they'll, put this match on, I'll come do it. That's
Right.
the only one I wanted to do. And then after that, I was just like, I'm burnt out. I'm done dealing with shady promoters, just bullshit. And I was like, I need some serious, like, even though I'd already had a year at home doing nothing, and then another year on top of that with COVID, I just felt like coming back in and like my heart wasn't there. Um, so it was one of those things where I was like, you go do what you're doing. He was, already working some indie stuff by himself, doing things. But I mean, nobody was trying to book me. I mean, I've gotten a few inquiries here and there, but they come through so unprofessionally. And even one of the last ones was like another day where I'd be, away from my family for something. And I was just like, don't I don't feel like doing that. Like I
Right.
don't want to, I'd spent so much time. I've missed so much time with family, with friends, so many occasions in the 20 years that I was like, I'm tired of that part of my life doing that to me. Um, so I really just stepped back, for a while, and I was just, and even now, I'm not really doing anything. My friend Chris Silvio got me into Death Proof Dojo, help him come coach, and then I started, getting a little bit of the bug with them and doing that kind of stuff. And even then, at first, I was like, I don't know if I can do this because I was so bitter still about things, and I didn't want to pass that on. Wrestling, you shouldn't be bitter, not
Sure.
not for at least 20 years. But it took me a while to kick out and kind of be interested in anything wrestling wise again. Like I used to even try to watch wrestling for a while and I just couldn't do it. I don't enjoy WWE at all. I enjoy a little bit of some of the people I know on AEW and seeing what they do and stuff. Other than that, I can't watch a full show other than the NWA shows. Like they're about the only shows that and that took me a while to get into. Took me kind of like seeing one in person, like when they were here in Tampa, about 8, 10 months ago. Um, since Chris works with them and some of our students were possibly going to get used, I just went to hang out and see what it was like over there and make sure our students didn't do something stupid, because
Right. Right.
it's easy for young kids to do when they get in a locker room with other people and you do something dumb. So I was just there to kind of keep eyes on them. And it
Mm-hmm.
was such a great environment that I was like, wow, this is actually awesome. So it got me interested in watching NWA and, helping them out a little bit.
There you go. That is awesome, right there. For the fans that are not aware of the Space Lord Victor, post WWE, what are you up to post WWE that you can share?
Well, I did a few audiobooks for a while because I've always had a love for voice acting. I've always loved cartoons, and just but paying attention to the voices and stuff. And there's been so many that I've followed over the years. Um, and it's just one of those things. I've always, you know, that was one of my main goals in WWE that I missed was not being in a Scooby Doo cartoon. Because that was really if you get an action figure, you get to be in a video game, and if you can be in a Scooby Doo cartoon, that was my, three main goals, and I missed out on the Scooby Doo cartoon. And so that's always kind of eaten at me. And so I've tried to do a bit of voice acting over the last while. Nothing that's particularly gotten anything good. Mostly now I just do stuff for people on Fiverr. I did a couple audio books that are available on Audible. You can hire me on Fiverr for real cheap, but I'll tell you now, my voice, obviously talking to each other, is not motivational. Had a bunch of people hit me up for motivational YouTube videos. And I'm going to tell you this, they all basically have the same script. They all say the same stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And my voice is not made to motivate anybody, except maybe in a wrestling ring when I'm threatening you. So that's about it. That's about the only way my voice is motivational. So it's been kind of funny when I get the people that request me for that. I've done some other stuff on there that's fun and cool. I've been working on a project. A friend of mine, he has his own blog website called Rad Dad Savage, and so it's cool stuff for dads. He's a dad, he's got a couple kids, and so it's just got a lot of blogs with dad stuff. There's a lot of memes, funny stuff, and so I do some of the voiceovers for kind of America's Funniest Home Video style stuff.
Oh, awesome.
A bunch of kids doing silly stuff, and I talk over top of them and make silly comments about it, more or less. So I've been doing that, and then also I've been promoting NWA a lot because once I once I went to that show and I'd been talking with Dr. Tom, and he had asked me if I was interested in possibly producing, and I had said, yeah, might actually be something cool. I wouldn't mind doing. So now I do some work with NWA backstage, and I basically say that I am Tom Pritchard's bitch because I handle the shit he doesn't want to, or that he's too busy doing because they pile on shit to Dr. Tom. And he's awesome. He was one of those guys that I formed such a good bond with in FCW. And he's just all around one of a kind. And I mean, that locker room itself is one of a kind. I've never seen anything like it in this business, and it's awesome. Like it is a total family of, you know, some guys. The way the veterans are and the way that the young guys are is I've never seen anything like it, and it's awesome. It's complete unicorn, as Trevor Murdoch likes to say. And like it's just a fun place to work. Like it's so wacky to me. One of my best friends growing up was a huge Smashing Pumpkins fan. Still a huge Smashing Pumpkins fan. And for the fact that I got to tell him like, hey, this is who I'm working with, and I sent him a picture of Billy Corgan. He's like, what the hell? And so like even last time, like that shows I was at when I was at 75 and the TVs, I'm sitting there and I'm like, 1 minute I'm talking to Billy Corgan, the next minute I'm talking to Violent J from the Insane Clown Posse, and the next minute I'm talking to Ricky Morton, and I'm just like, this is fucking wacky world. Like it's awesome. Like it's like this is great. Like when I'm at home, I don't talk to anybody. I don't do anything. You know, I go out to the school. That's about it. I don't do a lot with people other than that, and it just seems so like wild. Like when I was just sitting there thinking about it, I'm like, this is so wacky. I go from when you're at home, you're not a superhero. You're not doing anything cool. You're just whoever, and nobody cares. Then you get into the wrestling world, and all of a sudden, people that I've been watching or listening to since I was a teenager, I'm now sitting there having conversations with, and it's awesome. So it's really cool. I'm really happy that I've gotten the opportunity to do the little bit that I'm doing there.
For sure, for sure. It sounds like you're doing a lot of cool things right now. I'm glad you seem like you're in a good place with everything, and
Yeah,
getting into a better place with wrestling.
I'm a much happier person nowadays. I mean, it took a lot of, I'm not one of those people that's really big on, I don't know, being emotional or something like that. But when I noticed that after 10 years, I was just basically killing myself with negativity, and I was like, I really don't want to be like this anymore. I hate feeling like this. Like it wasn't a good place to be. And, I managed to take enough time off and away and actually like figure out what was going on and what to do with myself. And it's such a game changer. I mean, I hope, anybody else that gets stuck in a bad place, it's easy to get stuck there for a long time. And I've seen it happen with many people, and it happens to performers quite a bit because we're always looking for approval from anybody and everybody. And the wrestling business, especially, it's hard to get that approval. And I mean, entertainment across the board, especially nowadays, since everybody has their own opinion and are able to voice it, it gets even harder. So
Yeah.
it's really, it's one of those things where like negativity can constantly consume you. And I mean, I was one of those people. Like one of the only times I used to kind of get happy was when I'd see how miserable Zack Ryder was. And then we'd go wrestle and he'd beat me again. And, he'd feel a little better or a little angrier after the match. But I'd always say, well, hey, there's another one you beat me in. So, it was one of those things.
Working with the young guys, what is the best advice you like to give young guys or girls just breaking in the business, or those that have a desire and want to get into the pro wrestling business?
Well, you got to have thick skin. That's what I tell my students all the time when they ask me that. And because of the shit we were just talking about, like you are constantly looking for approval that you probably won't get because most coaches, producers, whoever else it is, they're all going to tell you what you're not doing right. And so you kind of tend to hear that more often than what you are doing right.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least that's how it used to be. I mean, at Death Proof, I would say like we do a pretty good job of not doing a negative reinforcement, which is a lot of the training I came up through was a lot of negative reinforcement, especially within, the developmental system. But nowadays the world is so much different. A lot of that stuff doesn't work anymore. People won't stand for it, which, you know, this business is funny. Like back in the day, the fans were kept out of it. They were kept in the dark so that, performers were performers and fans were fans.
Right.
And, there's been a lot of things in the last 10, 15 years about like more fans buy boots now than wrestlers and that type of stuff. So, I mean, the business isn't obviously as protected as it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the world's a lot different of a place nowadays. Like wrestling's super old school where the most, that blows up like the biggest stereotypes and kind of always can feed off that for just a simple yay or a simple boo. And now we're in such an interesting time in the world that like wrestling kind of has to change from that. Has to be, I mean, it has to be a little more tongue in cheek, I would say.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's good to see that kind of change coming about. Um, but yeah, you still need a tough skin because I mean, anything can happen. It's still wrestling. Like there was some stuff that happened at one of the last shows that's just from shit running downhill, and it just like affects people's opportunities sometimes where it can be something ridiculous that you wouldn't even think about, and but it still happens, and it's one of those things where if you've paid to get yourself somewhere and all you want is an opportunity and it gets taken away because of something that like maybe you did or didn't do, or just like at one split second somebody caught something in their own moment, it's hard to take sometimes because you're like, well shit, now I'm not doing anything and I didn't do anything to warrant not doing anything. But
Right.
these are things that happen in wrestling. Like I mean it can happen anywhere, but I mean wrestling, I feel like it happens a little more often than not. So having that tough skin, like you got to be able to take it. You can't sit around and boo boo face. um I mean, that's one of the biggest things. Like I'm a guy that's always kind of half worn my heart on my sleeve in a way. Like when I get pissed off, I let everybody know I'm pissed off because I want them to know I'm pissed off. But I mean, it doesn't always pay off. So
Right. And that's good advice for really anything, really. To have that thick skin because there are essentially, for lack of a better word, politics.
yeah,
There's,
100%.
you're going to deal with politics backstage. It's going to be everywhere, no matter where you go. You're
Yeah,
going to have that.
yeah.
Um,
Any business is a Game of Thrones, especially when
for sure.
it's you know pro wrestling, where you being the best pro wrestler
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily mean anything. This ain't this isn't baseball. That's the best I can say. Your batting average can be the best one there is, and people will notice that. But in wrestling, it doesn't really matter.
Right. Correct. Is there any possibility that we could see you maybe in NWA, as far as in the ring at some point, or AEW, or maybe a return to WWE or OVW, just for maybe even just an appearance?
Well, I mean, um, I'd hate to say no. Like, I mean, there's always a possibility. I don't really think there's any possibility of me being in AEW. I mean, I don't think my style of work, especially with how my body feels nowadays, would hold up very well with what their product is. I don't see WWE ever particularly giving a shit about me again. Um, if they remember one day that me and Connor are still the longest reigning tag team champions and they want to do something with it, hmm, I mean, by the time that phone call would ever come around, I mean, I couldn't say that I wouldn't take the phone call, but I can't say I'd be that interested. Probably depend on what the paycheck was and what they
Right.
wanted. Because I mean, they just, like I said, disrespect. And the biggest thing is me and Connor were always good soldiers,
Mm-hmm.
which is what, we were trained to be developmental, be good soldiers. We didn't have a choice. You had to be a good soldier or you weren't going to be there. And so that's what we were. And I mean, it didn't really, like it did and didn't pay off in the long run. You know what I mean? And I mean, I've never talked to Hunter. I mean, since we got let go, let alone did I talk to him in probably the year before type of thing. Like we'd always see him, but like it wasn't like we sat down to have a conversation or something. Um,
Right.
so especially with everything that's gone on with that company now, like I don't know what the fuck's going on over there. I'll
Yeah.
let them work out all of theirs, whatever they've got. And, I wouldn't ever say never, but I mean, I can't really see us entertaining much or them even bothering. Huge, they did such a great job of making everybody forget that we were ever NXT tag team champions and that we're still the longest reigning NXT tag team champions, that I can't see it really making any difference for them to want to do anything ever with it again. I'm really surprised they haven't managed to commit to somebody long enough since then, especially like I thought maybe um, FTR or Jordan and Gable would have beaten the record, or even like Bobby Fish, Kyle O'Reilly. Like, there was a bunch of teams I thought that they were going to destroy the record with, but apparently they never have. And so that just kind of surprises me. NWA, I guess it's possible. I mean, I don't have much of an itch, I don't, but only because I don't see what a lone victor brings. Like, it's like, yeah, I'm a good pro wrestler, but why do the fans care? I don't really feel like, I mean, there was one place ever in all of my matches with WWE where I can remember the crowd chanting to tag me in like Wildwood, New Jersey, randomly enough. One day out of all those shows, it's the only time I can ever remember getting, a crowd chanting to have me tagged in. And I was so um, shocked by that. I mean, but the Northeast always really liked us anyway. But I mean, Victor alone, not an Ascension. I don't know. I thought about it for a while before, Doc talked to me about producing, and I was like, I don't really have a way to rebrand myself to make people care. Like, I feel like NWA needs something more than just Victor, formerly of the Ascension, or Vic the Space Lord. And when I sat around trying to think of what I was gonna do, funny enough, at one point I filmed something thinking I had an idea,
Mm.
and then I watched it back, and it reminded me of Karn Alexander. But instead, I was like a 43-year-old man in my garage, and I said, "Fuck that! It's not what I'm doing." I was like, "It's in my head. It seemed like a really good idea, and then I saw it,
Right.
and I was like, no, not at all." And I enjoy what I'm doing right now. So I mean, I'm not saying it's never going to happen, but I mean, I enjoy where I'm at right now, doing what I'm doing, helping other people out. I get to hang out with friends again every couple months or whenever we run our shows, and I mean, that's kind of more than enough for me. Like, I'm pretty at peace with where I'm at in the business, and like I love teaching our students. They're all interesting and fun. Everyone's a little bit different. I mean, we've got a blind guy that we work with who makes me want to quit the business every day that I watch him do anything, because it's simply amazing. He's really good. I mean, to be able to show, like, and when you have to show somebody like exactly like, hey, my hand goes here when I do this, or we move this way or that way, like, okay, now you try it. And when he does it nicer than I can do it on his first try ever, and he can't actually see what I just showed him, it blows me away. I'm just like, get the hell out of here. I quit. Like,
Right. Right. Uh, any upcoming shows you would like to promote, maybe for the school, or any appearances that you have coming up?
I have nothing except for NWA Samhain coming up October 28th in Cleveland, and tickets are available on nwatix.com. So check that out. It is supposed to be the most violent and, oh, I can't remember. Sinister Minister did a awesome promo for it, but check it out on all the NWA stuff and you'll see it. It's super cool. And I'm looking forward to it. NWA 75, like those 2 days were amazing. Um, just the way the talent that I see there putting their hearts into everything, it's from top to bottom, people just working their asses off and putting everything they've got into making NWA work and make it be, NWA again. And
Yeah.
it's fun. It's fun to be a part of. It's fun to watch. I mean, I can't say enough good things about it. Like, if you like wrestling, then watch NWA. Come check that out. Like, NWA Power every week. I think there's a new one tomorrow night comes out on YouTube. So check that out. I mean, there's a lot of awesome matches on there. I mean, it's got a great talent roster, and I mean, it's fun. It's a fun show. Billy's doing a lot of cool stuff with production and everything now. Um, like I said, I can't say enough good about it. I really want to see it do everything that it should do.
Definitely encourage all the fans to go out and check out NWA. Go watch NWA Power on YouTube, and then um, support NWA. NWA
Yeah.
is it's growing. They're growing bigger and better than ever before.
Yeah.
The current actually NWA World Heavyweight Champion uh, is EC3, and
Hmm.
he's currently working also with OVW, and so like that's really
That's right.
awesome to see him back in OVW and
Right.
bringing the NWA World Heavyweight Championship to OVW.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really cool. I mean, that was one I didn't, I forgot to answer that one. So I actually tried, somewhat tried for me and Von Lilas to get a tag match against the Outrunners a while ago on OVW, and nothing ever came of it. So I guess Al Snow just doesn't care about me either.
I saw that, and I
But
think I remember seeing that post, and I was like, I'd love to see that because I'd love to see you all get together again at least one more time, just
yeah.
for like a special show, even just one time,
Yeah.
and just to see you in person again and be able to get a picture with you in person. It's
Yeah.
really cool.
I
I
mean, that
never
would be
got to see
fun.
why you were here.
That's
So
crazy because I was there for 3 years and took pictures with people all the time. So I
I
can't
don't
believe
think
that.
I don't recall that I ever did. And actually,
Oh, okay.
I might have, but it might have been with a disposable camera or something. And
Gotcha.
so,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, it was that long ago.
yeah. So I typically use. I didn't have a camera at the time, like as far as like, you know, obviously
Gotcha.
phones weren't technology wasn't like it is now. So, but that's a
Hmm.
different story.
But yeah,
Um, how can fans follow you on social media?
I'm at Vic the Space Lord with underscore, like, so it's Vic underscore the underscore Space Lord, and it's my screaming face, and that's me on Twitter and Instagram. I know I'm verified on Instagram. Twitter removed it, or X, whatever you want to call it. They removed my verification, but I mean, it's there. It's me. I don't think there's anybody even wasting their time trying to impersonate me. There's no gain there.
All right, fans, go give him a follow on social media. And then if I am a promoter that I'm listening or watching, and I want to maybe bring you in for an appearance, how can I go about doing that?
You can contact me on my social media or at my booking email, which is wwtstruggle@gmail.com.
All right, promoters, go contact and bring them in for a appearance and or just just a spot and let them work. Promo with one of your guys or something, one of your
Hmm.
talents. And but for now, Victor, I'd like to thank you for coming on the Final Count Spotlight, and you're welcome to come back anytime. I've enjoyed this.
Thanks. Me too, Ryan. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
No problem. Thank you.